Hello and welcome everyone to AFSA's Industry Icon Podcast. Today we're joined by Tanya Sanders, Chair of AFSA's Women's Leadership Council and EVP and Head of Auto for Wells Fargo. Tanya Sanders, welcome to the inaugural Women's Leadership Council Industry Icon Podcast featuring you, the Chair of the Women's Leadership Council. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Danielle. I'm excited. This is our first one.
Yay. Well, thanks for your leadership and bringing this to fruition. Let's start right in with letting us know, can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up in this industry?
Yeah, so I wish I could say I had like the best laid out plan and I knew exactly what I was going to do when I grew up. But if I even attempted to tell you what my plan originally was, you would see that I'm very, very far off course. But the good news is that it all works out. I landed in auto finance and in the consumer lending industry by accident, actually. I really wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to save the planet. When I was in college, I studied mechanical engineering, wanted to do things around power generation, wanted to build, better ways of distributing energy across the planet. And I started out with that, but then I was became really interested in business and finance while I was at my first company, General Electric. And so while I was there, I had the opportunity to build out a toolkit of process improvement. I really became more of a general manager, built out some strong foundations and evaluating business processes and business strategies, understanding how P&Ls work, how businesses make money. And at some point, I decided to get married. And my husband was in a different location, or my fiance at the time was in a different location than I was. And Danielle, I had to find a job where he was. And so as I put my resume out there and used my network, I found an opportunity at Bank of America. And that was my first entry point into the auto finance space at Bank of America's, at the time, dealer financial services business back in 2005.
Well, we're so glad that your path diverged and ended you up here. That is fascinating about the energy industry. Maybe that'll come full circle as the way vehicles change. Who outside of your family do you view as your main influence or some of your main influences?
It's interesting. When I think about influencers, there's the whole social media thing where there are people that everyone follows. But when I think about my influences, particularly in the context of my career, there have been different people at different times who have played a key role, but all of them have stayed with me in some way, shape, or form and continue to influence. As I mentioned, I landed in the auto industry by accident. And one of the people I would say that had a big influence on that was Tim Russey. I would consider he's an industry icon. There are actually all the people I would probably mention here, I would consider icons more so than myself. But Tim took a chance and a risk on me, bringing me into the auto finance space without having any exposure to the industry, but just took someone who had some raw skill sets and said, "Hey, you could totally do this," and help me, figure it out and learn the business. He continues to be a sounding board and has been over the years, and so he's one I would put out there. Bruce Jackson, another icon I would say in the industry, currently at Santander. He taught me much of what I know about how the industry works. I had worked for Bruce for many, many years. And he also showed me particularly the importance of dealer relationships, but also just the nuts and bolts of how to be an effective operator in this business, all the way from the frontline team members to the folks who are out in the field calling on dealers and just how it all works together. And he was one of those leaders who just really believed in building culture in the organization. Really believed and supported in DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion through his actions without all the fanfare. And so a lot of how I interact with my teams, how I engage with my contact center teams, my funding teams, my relationship managers out in the field. I model a lot of that after watching Bruce and how he did that and did it in a way that was just so easy. So he's one I would put out there. Um, I'm thinking about T. Duckett, Tashonda Duckett, when I was at Chase Auto. She was the CEO of the business at the time when I joined. And wow, like there's no more inspiring leader you could ever work with, and she's one that I continue to follow today. But she's one who not only ran her business well and inspired her team, she did more beyond her business. She did a lot in the industry and in her community, and still does as the CEO of TIAA today. And so she's one I still follow. And I think if anyone is looking for someone who's an inspiring leader to just like pick, take notes on, I think she's one I would certainly have at the top of the list. I was just going to add, I have one more person I would put out there, and I think about how we connect across our industry. And you and I know this person well, Marguerite Watanabe. If there's an influencer of influencers there in our industry, particularly when I think about a strong supporter of women and making sure that we're all connected and connecting on the things that are important to move us forward. Marguerite is one who certainly is an influencer for me still.
Those are four fantastic people. Was it one of those people or someone else? What's the best career advice you've ever received?
So the best career advice I've ever received, this was really early in my career, and it didn't mean much to me then, but it means everything to me now. And that was, you can have it all, just not all at the same time. So when I heard that at age probably 25, it was just me, and I certainly believed I could have it all. But now that I'm 47 with a family and a business to run and parents to take care of, having it all at the same time is a really hard thing to do. And so I've come to appreciate that advice more and more. I often have to repeat it to myself, sometimes on a daily basis when I think about, you know, life. We talk about career life balance, and it's never balanced. It's never 50-50. And I do have to make sure that I think about there'll be a phase in life where family comes first, and there's more pulling on me from a family perspective compared to early in my career and probably later in my career where there may be less draws from a family perspective and more career time.
Well, speaking of advice, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self now? What would you tell her?
Uh, so at 22, I was still at Clemson University studying to become a mechanical engineer, trying to figure out how I was going to save the planet. And I had a lot on my plate. So I think when I look back at what I was doing at that time, I was president of my sorority. I was co-chairing a minority council. I was like in leadership positions for a couple of engineering teams or engineering organizations. And I had at least two jobs the whole time I was in college because I was paying for school myself. And I would say, girl, slow down. Like you don't have to do it all. Take it all in stride. And I do think that career advice I received around you can have it all, but not all at the same time probably would have been good advice back then too, because of my desire to just go after it all. But it's not, you don't have to do everything all at once. You can do it all in phases and over time. And so that would be my advice. Still lead, still have a voice, but you don't have to do it all.
We have one more question, and we will not hold you to this, but if you were to look into your crystal ball, how do you imagine the consumer credit industry will change in the next 5 to 10 years? What would you predict? We'll give you lots of praise if it turns out to be true, but we won't even mention it if you're way off.
Well, I'll take it in broad themes. I think the consumer credit industry, when we look at where we are today in 2022, certainly we're dealing with a lot of headwinds and challenges, whether it's rising interest rates, dealing with inflation, still normalizing and stabilizing post COVID. But 5 to 10 years from now, particularly in the auto finance space, I certainly see us being continuing to be much more digital, much more about consumer customization and driving more and more towards consumer preferences. But as someone who really believes in all of the investments in innovation and data and better tools and capabilities for our customers, I just think that more and more customers will be interacting online digitally through primarily through their phones, and with the advancements in technology in our cars, they will likely be doing a lot of interactions and transactions through their vehicles themselves. So I'm very excited about what the future holds, but particularly in the auto finance space, lots of trends around technology, digital, and certainly electric vehicles, and all of that goes into our cars will be much more integrated.
Well, Tanya Sanders, thank you for being our first guinea pig icon. We really appreciate it. And this is a great way to start the series that you created. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danielle. I appreciate it. Thank you for kicking this off. AFSA is doing a great job supporting the Women's Leadership Council, and I hope this does have a meaningful impact for all of our members and all the women in our industry.
Thanks so much for listening to AFSA's Extra Credit Podcast, Industry Icon Series. We'll be highlighting a number of other women in the consumer credit industry, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us.